You wake up every morning and put on a face that isn't quite yours. Not literally, of course. But somewhere between the alarm and the door, you become someone else. Someone more acceptable. Someone easier to explain. You adjust your voice, your posture, the way you laugh. You rehearse conversations before they happen, edit your thoughts before they leave your mouth, and by the time you step into the world, the real you has already gone back into hiding. It's not that you're lying exactly, it's more like translation. Taking who you truly are and converting it into a version others can digest without discomfort. A version that fits, a version that belongs. But here's the thing about masks, they start to feel heavier the longer you wear them. You tell yourself it's just adaptation, that everyone does this, that it's survival, not deception. And maybe that's true. Maybe we all perform a little code switch between contexts, smooth out our edges to avoid friction. But for you, it's different. It's not just softening the truth, it's living two entirely separate realities. One where you exist freely, authentically, messy, and raw and real. And another where you exist carefully, strategically, always 3 steps ahead of being discovered. You know the script by heart, the jokes that land, the opinions that won't raise eyebrows, the stories you can tell and the ones you bury so deep you sometimes forget they're yours. You move through your day like an actor who never leaves the stage, every interaction a scene, every relationship a performance review. And the exhausting part, you're good at it. Too good. People believe the version you show them. They trust it. They like it. They build their understanding of you around it and you let them. Because the alternative, showing them the truth, feels like handing someone a bomb and hoping they don't drop it. So you keep going. You laugh when you're supposed to. You stay quiet when it's safer. You nod along to values that contradict your own. Sit through conversations that erase parts of who you are, and you do it so smoothly that no one ever suspects the distance between what they see and what's actually there. But you feel it, every single day. That gap, that split, the constant low-grade anxiety of knowing that if they really knew you, really saw you, everything would change, the acceptance would vanish, the comfort would shatter, and you'd be left standing there, exposed, with nowhere to hide. So you don't let them see, you keep the mask on, you keep the double life turning, because it's safer this way. Lonelier, yes. More exhausting, absolutely. But safer. And for now, that's enough. Or at least, that's what you tell yourself every morning when you wake up and become someone else all over again. You weren't always split in two. There was a time, maybe in childhood, maybe earlier than you can fully remember, when you were just one person. Whole. Uncomplicated. You said what you felt and felt what you said, and there was no filter, no calculation, no performance. You existed without commentary, without the exhausting work of translation. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. Maybe it was a single moment, a look of disappointment on someone's face when you revealed too much, a punishment for being honest, a rejection that taught you authenticity has a price. Or maybe it was quieter than that. A slow accumulation of small moments where you learned that certain parts of you weren't welcome, that some truths made people uncomfortable, that love, acceptance, safety, they all came with conditions. And the condition was simple: be less of who you are. So you started editing. At first, just small things. A thought you kept to yourself, an opinion you softened, a part of your identity you learned to hide in certain rooms, with certain people. It felt manageable then. Strategic even. You told yourself it was maturity, learning when to speak and when to stay silent. But the editing didn't stop. It grew. What started as self-preservation became a second nature. You began to notice patterns. Which version of you worked in which context? Who you needed to be at home versus at work versus with friends versus alone. And slowly, so slowly you didn't notice it happening, you stopped being one person adapting to different situations. You became two entirely different people living in the same body. The split wasn't dramatic. There was no breaking point, no moment where you consciously decided to live a double life. It was survival dressed up as choice. You learned that authenticity is a luxury not everyone can afford, that some people have to hide to stay safe, to keep their jobs, to maintain their relationships, to avoid violence or rejection, or the soul-crushing weight of being misunderstood. So you built a second self, a public-facing version that could navigate the world without friction, and you kept the real you locked away, reserved for moments of privacy, for the few people who earned access, or for no one at all. Just you and the mirror and the quiet truth you carry alone. But here's what nobody tells you about living this way. The line between the two versions starts to blur. You begin to forget which thoughts are genuinely yours, and which ones you've performed so many times they've become a reflex. You catch yourself pretending even when you're alone, editing your own internal monologue, judging yourself through the eyes of the people you've been performing for. The mask stops being something you wear and starts being something you are, and the real you, the one you've been protecting all this time, becomes harder and harder to find. You reach for authenticity and grasp at shadows. You try to remember who you were before the split, but the memory is hazy, distant, like a language you used to speak fluently but can no longer recall. And you wonder, terrified, if you've been pretending for so long that there's nothing left underneath. If the double life has become the only life, if you've forgotten how to be whole. The tiredness you feel isn't the kind that sleep can fix. It's deeper than that. It lives in your bones, in the space between your thoughts, in the constant hum of vigilance that never quite turns off. Because maintaining two lives, two identities, two versions of the truth, it drains you in ways that are hard to explain to anyone who hasn't lived it. Every morning you wake up, and the performance begins again. Every interaction requires a calculation. Every conversation demands that you remember which version of yourself you're supposed to be in this moment, with this person, in this context. And the mental load of it all, the endless monitoring, the constant self-surveillance, it's exhausting in a way that makes you want to disappear. You're always thinking 3 steps ahead. Before you speak, you run a simulation. How will this sound? What will they think? Does this fit the version of me they expect? You edit in real time, adjusting your tone, your word choice, your entire presence to match the environment you're in. And when you slip, when something real or accidentally escapes, you feel the panic rise in your chest. You watch their face for signs of confusion or judgment, or that subtle shift in energy that tells you you've revealed too much. So you course correct, you laugh it off, you bury it again, and you add it to the growing list of things you need to remember to keep hidden. The performance never ends. Even in moments that should be restful, casual, easy, you're still working, still curating, still pretending. And the thing about pretending is that it requires you to be two people at once, the one who's performing and the one who's watching the performance, making sure it's convincing. You become both the actor and the director, simultaneously living the moment and critiquing it from the outside. There's no full immersion, no complete presence. You can't surrender to an experience because you're too busy managing how you appear within it. Someone tells a joke and you laugh, but even as you're laughing, you're analysing whether the laugh sounds natural, whether it's too loud or not enough, whether this version of you would find that funny. A friend shares something vulnerable and you respond with care, but underneath the care is a script you're following, a version of empathy that's genuine but also carefully measured to maintain the illusion. Nothing is effortless, nothing is spontaneous, everything passes through the filter of the double life. Psychology has a term for this: cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort that comes from holding two contradictory beliefs, or living in a way that conflicts with your internal sense of self. Your brain knows something is wrong. It recognizes the gap between who you are and who you're pretending to be, and it creates a low-grade stress response that never fully resolves. Your nervous system stays activated. Your cortisol levels remain elevated. Your body keeps score even when your mind tries to rationalize the split as necessary, as temporary, as just the way things have to be. But your body knows. It knows that living inauthentically is a form of chronic stress, and over time that stress manifests in anxiety, in depression, in physical symptoms that have no clear medical cause, in the bone-deep exhaustion that no amount of rest can touch. You start to notice the cost in small ways, the relationships that feel hollow because no one really knows you, the achievements that ring empty because they belong to the version of you that isn't real, the loneliness that follows you everywhere, even into crowded rooms because you're surrounded by people who only love a fiction. And the cruelest part, you can't even blame them. They love the version you showed them, the version you worked so hard to create. How could they love something they've never seen? Your brain wasn't designed for this. Living in contradiction, holding two incompatible truths at the same time, presenting one reality while experiencing another, it creates a kind of psychological friction that neuroscience is only beginning to fully understand. Cognitive dissonance isn't just a concept, it's a measurable state of distress. When your actions don't align with your beliefs, when your external life contradicts your internal truth, your brain registers it as a threat. The anterior cingulate cortex, the part of your brain responsible for detecting errors and conflicts, lights up like a warning signal. Something is wrong, something doesn't match, and your entire system begins trying to resolve the inconsistency, except you can't resolve it. Not without dismantling the double life entirely. So the conflict just sits there, unresolved, eating away at you from the inside. The brain craves coherence. It wants your thoughts, feelings, and actions to tell a unified story. When they don't, when there's a gap between who you are and who you're pretending to be, your mind starts working overtime to rationalize the split. You tell yourself it's necessary, that everyone does it, that it's not really lying if it's just strategic omission, that you're protecting yourself, protecting others, protecting the fragile piece that would shatter if you told the truth. And maybe those things are true, but the rationalization doesn't eliminate the dissonance, it just gives it a narrative. Your brain keeps registering the conflict, keeps sending up flares of discomfort, and you keep pushing them down, suppressing the signal, until suppression itself becomes another exhausting job you have to perform. There's a concept in psychology called identity fragmentation. It happens when the different versions of yourself become so distinct that they start to feel like separate people. You're not just adapting to different contexts anymore, you're inhabiting entirely different selves, each with their own speech patterns, values, boundaries, even body language. The you at work might be confident, assertive, unbothered. The you at home might be quiet, compliant, invisible. The you with certain friends might be funny, carefree, surface level. And the you when you're finally alone might be none of those things at all, just raw and tired and wondering which one is real. This fragmentation isn't the same as having a multifaceted personality. Everyone has different sides, different moods, different ways of showing up. But for you, the sides don't connect. They exist in isolation, separated by walls you've built to keep them from bleeding into each other, and the effort of maintaining those walls, of keeping each version contained in its proper context, it fractures your sense of self until you're not sure there's a center anymore. Just pieces, just performances. Neuroscience shows us that chronic inauthenticity affects the brain's stress response system. Your amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for detecting threats, remains hyperactive, because on some level you're always in danger. Danger of being discovered, danger of slipping up, danger of the mask falling off at the wrong moment. So you stay vigilant. Your body stays in fight or flight mode even when there's no immediate threat, just the constant underlying possibility of exposure. And this chronic activation has consequences. It impairs your ability to regulate emotions. It disrupts your sleep. It weakens your immune system. It makes everything feel harder than it should be because your nervous system never gets to rest. You're living in a state of perpetual psychological whiplash, constantly switching between identities, and your brain is exhausted from the effort of keeping them all separate, all convincing, all intact. And then there's the issue of memory. When you live a double life, your memories become compartmentalized. You remember things differently depending on which version of yourself was present at the time. Certain experiences belong to one identity and not the other. You might have entire relationships, entire years of your life that feel disconnected from who you are now because they were lived by a version of you that no longer exists or never really did. Your autobiography becomes fragmented, non-linear, full of gaps and contradictions that you can't quite reconcile. And this fragmentation makes it harder to form a coherent sense of identity, a stable understanding of who you've been and who you're becoming, because your past doesn't tell one story, it tells several, and they don't all agree. There's a reason you keep the mask on, a reason you've built this elaborate structure of half-truths and careful performances. It's not weakness, it's not cowardice, it's fear, yes, but the kind of fear that's rooted in reality. You've learned, through experience or observation, or some deep instinctive knowing, that the world doesn't always reward authenticity. that sometimes being real gets you hurt, rejected, abandoned, erased. So you hide. Not because you want to, but because you've calculated the cost of being seen, and it feels too high. The double life isn't a choice you made lightly. It's a survival strategy, a way of moving through a world that hasn't proven itself safe enough for the truth. Maybe it started with your family. Maybe you grew up in a home where certain feelings weren't allowed, where anger was punished, where sadness was weakness, where queerness or difference or complexity had no place. So you learned early to split yourself, to show them the child they could accept and hide the rest somewhere they'd never find it. You performed normalcy. You mirrored their values even when they contradicted your own. You became what they needed you to be because love felt conditional, and the condition was conformity. And maybe you're still doing it, still editing yourself around them, still playing the role of the son or daughter or sibling they can understand, while the real you exists only in the spaces they can't reach. Because the alternative, losing them entirely, feels worse than the exhaustion of pretending. Or maybe it's not family. Maybe it's your community, your culture, your religion. The systems you were born into that came with rules about who you're allowed to be. You look around and see what happens to people who step out of line. You see the whispers, the exclusion, the violence, subtle or overt, that follows those who refuse to conform, and you make a choice, or rather, the choice makes itself. You hide the parts of yourself that don't fit, your beliefs, your desires, your identity, whatever it is that would mark you as other, as wrong, as dangerous to the carefully maintained order. You laugh at jokes that demean people like you. You stay silent when you should speak. You let them believe you're one of them because being one of them is safer than being yourself. And every time you do it, every time you betray your own truth for the comfort of belonging, something inside you dies a little. But you keep doing it, because exile feels like a fate worse than death. Or maybe the fear is professional. You work in an environment that punishes authenticity, that rewards only a certain kind of person, a certain way of being. So you code switch, you flatten your personality, you hide your accent, your background, your politics, anything that might mark you as less than, as difficult, as not a culture fit. You watch people who are too honest, too real, too unwilling to play the game, and you see what happened to them. Overlooked, pushed out, quietly erased, and you decide that success, survival, requires a performance. So you give them what they want, the polished version, the palatable version, the version that doesn't make anyone uncomfortable. And you climb the ladder wearing a mask, achieving things that should feel like victories, but instead feel hollow because the person receiving the accolades isn't really you. It's the character you created, and the real you is still back there, invisible, unrecognized, wondering if any of it even counts. Or maybe it's romantic. Maybe you've loved people who couldn't handle all of you, who wanted the easy parts, the fun parts, the parts that didn't require them to grow or change or confront their own limitations. So you made yourself smaller. You hid your needs, your fears, your full emotional range. You learned to be low maintenance, easygoing, uncomplicated, because complicated felt like a risk. You watched their eyes glaze over when you tried to go deeper, felt them pull away when you showed too much vulnerability, and you learned the lesson. Love is conditional. It's given to the version of you that's easiest to be around. So you perform that version. You give them the highlights and hide the struggle. You pretend everything is fine even when you're falling apart. Because you'd rather have a relationship built on pretending than no relationship at all. And the loneliness of being loved for someone you're not somehow feels better than the loneliness of being alone. The fear that keeps you hidden has 1,000 faces. Shame, rejection, violence, poverty, isolation, the loss of everything you've built. And the cruelest part is that the fear is often justified. The world has given you evidence. You've seen what happens to people who refuse to hide. You've watched them suffer for their authenticity. So you stay hidden. You keep the double life intact, not because you're weak, but because you're surviving. And survival, sometimes, looks like disappearing. You can be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. In fact, that's often when the loneliness cuts the deepest. When you're in a room full of laughter, conversation, connection, and you're right there in the middle of it, participating, smiling, engaging, but somewhere inside you there's a voice whispering, none of these people know you. Not really. They know the version you've shown them, the carefully curated highlights, the acceptable parts. But the whole truth, the messy, complicated reality of who you actually are that remains hidden, locked away, and the loneliness of being unknown, of being seen but not truly recognized. It's a special kind of isolation that follows you everywhere, even into intimacy, even into spaces that should feel safe. You watch people share themselves freely. You see them speak their truth without hesitation, express their feelings without filter, exist in their full complexity without fear. And you wonder what that must feel like, to be known, fully known, to let someone see all of you, the light and the shadow, the strength and the brokenness, and to be loved anyway. Not despite who you are, but because of it. You crave that kind of connection with an ache that never quite goes away. But you can't reach for it. Because reaching for it means risking everything. It means dismantling the double life, removing the mask, standing there exposed and hoping, praying that what's underneath is enough. And the possibility that it might not be, that they might see the real you and decide you're too much, too different, too difficult, too anything. That possibility is paralyzing. So you stay half known, you let people get close but only so close. You share pieces of yourself but never the whole picture. You cultivate friendships built on shared interests, common experiences, easy compatibility, but you keep the deeper parts hidden. The fears that keep you awake at night, the identity you're still figuring out, the past you're ashamed of, the desires that don't fit the narrative. You portion yourself out in digestible pieces, giving each person just enough to maintain the relationship but never enough to threaten the stability of your double life. And it works, in a way. You have people around you. You're not technically alone. But the loneliness remains because none of them have the full story. None of them know the person you are when you're finally by yourself, when the performance ends and you can breathe. The worst part is the loneliness you feel in your most important relationships. The people who love you, your family, your partner, your closest friends, they think they know you. They believe the intimacy is real. And maybe it is real, as far as it goes. But there's this canyon between what they see and what you're hiding, and you can feel it every time they tell you they love you, every time they say they understand you, every time they praise you for being someone you're not entirely sure you are. You want to tell them. God, you want to tell them. You rehearse the conversation in your head 1,000 times. You imagine the moment of revelation, the vulnerability, the relief of finally being honest. But then you imagine their reaction, the confusion, the disappointment, the potential rejection, and you swallow the truth again. You smile, you say thank you, you accept their love for the fiction you've created, and you carry the real you in silence. There's a particular cruelty in being celebrated for a performance, when people admire you, praise you, build you up for qualities that belong to the mask rather than the person underneath. You achieve things, you're successful, well-liked, respected. People tell you how impressed they are, how proud, how inspiring you are, and you feel nothing. Or worse, you feel like a fraud. Because the achievements belong to the version of you that isn't real. The real you, the one who's struggling, who's tired, who's barely holding it together, that person remains invisible, uncelebrated, unknown. So the praise rings hollow, the success feels empty. Because you're winning at a game you never wanted to play, as a character you never wanted to become, and no one is applauding the actual person you are. You start to wonder if anyone would love you if they really knew you, if anyone would stay if you stopped performing. And that question haunts you. It keeps you up at night. It poisons even your good moments because you can't fully trust them. You can't believe the affection is real when it's directed at someone who isn't. And over time, the loneliness calcifies. It becomes a permanent condition. Not something that comes and goes, but something you carry always, a weight in your chest that reminds you are fundamentally alone. Not because you have no one, but because you've never let anyone truly see you. And the tragic irony is that the double life you built to protect yourself, to keep you safe, to help you belong, it's the very thing that guarantees your isolation. You're surrounded by people who care about you, and you've never been more alone. Because being unknown, even by those who love you, is a loneliness that no amount of company can cure. So where does that leave you? Standing at the crossroads between two versions of yourself, exhausted from the weight of maintaining both, wondering if there's a way forward that doesn't require you to choose. Because that's the question that haunts you in the quiet moments. Can you ever be whole again? Can the split be healed? Or is this just who you are now, forever divided, forever performing, forever caught between the person you show the world and the person you hide away. The easy answer, the one self-help culture loves to sell, is integration. Bring the two selves together. Be authentic. Live your truth. As if it's that simple. As if you can just decide one day to stop hiding and everything will magically fall into place. But you know better. You know the stakes. You know what authenticity has cost others. You know the world doesn't always reward honesty with acceptance. And maybe that's okay. Maybe the goal isn't to become one unified person who lives exactly the same way in every context. Maybe that's not even realistic. We all adapt. We all shift depending on where we are and who we're with. The version of you at a funeral isn't the same as the version at a party, and that's not dishonesty, that's just being human. The question isn't whether you should be exactly the same in every moment. The question is whether the gap between your versions has grown so wide that you've lost yourself in the space between them. Whether the performance has become so consuming that you can't remember what's real anymore. Whether the cost of hiding is greater than the cost of being seen. Integration doesn't have to mean burning your life down. It doesn't require you to walk into every room and announce every hidden truth. It can be smaller than that, quieter. It can start with just allowing yourself to acknowledge the split, to name it, to stop pretending that the exhaustion and loneliness are normal. It can be finding one person, just one, who you let see a little more of the real you, testing the waters, offering a piece of truth, and seeing if they can hold it without dropping it. It can be setting small boundaries that honour who you actually are instead of who you've been pretending to be. Saying no when you mean no. Expressing a preference instead of always deferring. Letting a real emotion show instead of performing the expected one. These aren't revolutionary acts, but for someone who's been living a double life, they're radical. They're cracks in the armour. They're the beginning of something that might eventually look like wholeness. But here's what nobody tells you. Integration is a risk. There's no guarantee it works out the way you hope. Some people will leave when you stop performing. Some relationships were only ever built on the version of you that isn't real, and when that version disappears, so does the relationship. Some spaces will reject you, some opportunities will close. The consequences you've been afraid of, some of them will actually happen, and you have to decide if the possibility of being known, truly known, is worth the certainty of losing some of what you've built on pretending. Only you can answer that question. Only you know how much longer you can carry the weight of two lives. Only you know if the loneliness of being unknown has become unbearable enough to risk the loneliness of being rejected for who you actually are. And maybe the answer isn't integration at all. Maybe it's acceptance. Accepting that the double life isn't a flaw or a failure, but a survival strategy that served you when you needed it. That you're not broken for living this way. You're adaptive. You're resilient. You've done what you needed to do to survive in a world that hasn't always been safe for your truth. Maybe the work isn't about becoming one person. Maybe it's about carrying both versions with more compassion. Recognizing that the performer and the hidden self are both you. That you contain multitudes, contradictions, complexities that don't need to be resolved into a single coherent narrative. Maybe wholeness doesn't mean unity. Maybe it means acceptance. Accepting the split. Accepting the cost. Accepting that you might live this way for a while longer or maybe forever, and that doesn't make you a fraud. It makes you human. Because the truth is, most people are living some version of a double life. Maybe not as extreme as yours, maybe not with stakes as high, but everyone is hiding something. Everyone has parts of themselves they keep locked away, truths they don't speak, versions of themselves they only show in private. The difference is most people don't think about it as much as you do. They don't feel the weight of it the way you do. But you're not alone in this. The split is not unique to you. It's a human condition. The tension between who we are and who we show, between authenticity and survival, between being known and being safe. You've just been carrying it more consciously, more heavily, more painfully than most. So maybe the question isn't whether you should integrate or accept. Maybe it's what you need right now, today, in this moment. Maybe some days you need to take the mask off, even just for a little while, and remember what it feels like to breathe freely. And maybe other days you need to wear it, and that's okay too. Maybe healing doesn't look like a single choice, a dramatic transformation, a clear before and after. Maybe it looks like living in the mess of it, honouring both the need for safety and the hunger for authenticity, letting them coexist, letting yourself be complicated. Because you are, you always have been. And the double life, exhausting as it is is proof that you're strong enough to carry contradictions, strong enough to survive in a world that hasn't made space for all of you, and maybe, when you're ready, brave enough to start making that space yourself, not all at once, not perfectly, but honestly, one small truth at a time, until the person you are in hiding and the person you show the world start to recognize each other, until the gap begins to close, until you can finally rest, not because you've become one person, but because both versions of you finally feel like home,